Ladies and gentlemen, imagine if the reverse were true. Imagine if Rudy Giuliani hired a tech company. During the last days of President Obama's administration, to gather information on an incoming Clinton campaign. Let's say Madam Secretary had won. But Rudy Giuliani had hired a tech company, a tech executive, or hired an attorney who then worked alongside a tech company and a tech executive to obtain information on internet data and traffic for the incoming Clinton administration, and then shared that information with Central Intelligence, media, and everyone else to create the fabricated notion and absurd fantasy that the incoming Democratic presidential administration was working with another foreign country to undermine democracy. Imagine if the reverse were true. You always have to look at the Durham Probe special counsel or any discovery or revelation or indictment from the opposite viewpoint. Imagine if Democrats had experienced what Trump experienced. So this is important because you have the New York Times. Durham distances himself from furor in right-wing media over filing. The furor is justified. The outrage is, of course, legitimate and justified. If the reverse were true, the New York Times would never accept an attempt by Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump or Rudy Giuliani or a law firm linked to the Republican National Committee or a law firm linked to Donald Trump trying to obtain internet data of Clinton's campaign or of Biden's campaign or of anyone's campaign on the left. And then sharing that information, like I said, with intelligence agencies. That's exactly what took place. So hit subscribe to this channel right now. Be here tonight for the live stream at around 7 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to try to do it a little earlier tonight. But here, the special counsel implicitly acknowledged that White House internet data he discussed, which conservative outlets have portrayed as proof of spying on the Trump campaign or Trump White House, came from the Obama era. That is completely and utterly irrelevant. Because they couldn't go ahead. Of course it came from the Obama era. They got access to the Oval Office immediately before Trump was utilizing the Oval Office. So who was president then? My God Almighty. They latch on to the most irrelevant facts, or they take things and they focus on context. It's out of context. It's out of context. They take things out of context all the time. Of course, it was the Obama era. Who was president prior to President Trump? His predecessor was President Obama. So they had to, when they were trying to obtain information on Trump, what they did was hire a tech company, hire an attorney who worked with a tech company and a tech executive to obtain information. And they did so by setting up a whole bunch of surveillance prior to President Trump entering the executive office. So we'll read this right here. This is a New York Times article. Durham distances himself in new filing. No, he didn't. In a filing on Thursday, Mr. Durham defended himself, saying those accusations about his intentions were simply not true. He said he had, quote, valid and straightforward reasons for including the information in a February 11th filing that set off a firestorm, while disavowing responsibility of how certain news outlets had interpreted and portrayed it. How can you not? Now hit subscribe to this channel right now. Hit subscribe to the stock market crash channel. We're seeing exactly what I've been saying in the stock market. Are we not seeing exactly what I've been saying in my Federalist article in October of 2021? To read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, other publications, go to hagoodman.com. If you want to support my work, my Patreon is below. But Durham wrote, if third parties or members of the media have overstated or understated or otherwise misinterpreted facts contained in the government's motion, that does not in any way undermine the valid reasons for the government's inclusion of this information. First of all, here's how Democrats or DNC newsletters in the Washington Post and New York Times try to circumvent the reality that the Clinton campaign, Democrats, utilized in a legal manner attorneys who now, one of whom is indicted, and a lot of more indictments from these attorneys at that law firm will take place, almost certainly. But they hired attorneys and worked with tech companies to obtain information on Trump. This is the definition of surveillance. They utilized his internet data and traffic, and they were able to set up, they were able to obtain that data prior to him becoming president, through their activities prior to him becoming president. Or they were able to utilize eventually his internet data because they set up through the tech company and through the tech executive and through the attorney and through other means a way to channel or acquire or obtain his internet traffic before he started as president. This is not rocket science, my God almighty. So the article goes, Mr. Durham says Mr. Sussman falsely told the FBI official he had no clients, but he was really there on behalf of both the Clinton campaign and a technology executive named Rodney Jaffe. Mr. Sussman denies ever saying that, while maintaining he was only there on behalf of Mr. Jaffe, not the campaign. Of course he was there. He was being paid by the Clintons, so it's like, okay. Several sentences of the filing recount a second meeting. So why would Mr. Jaffe or that tech company want to engage in surveillance of Mr. Trump or obtain his So they don't like the word surveillance. Why would anyone want to obtain the internet traffic of Trump? Why would anyone want to obtain Donald Trump's internet usage information? Da na 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 na. Oh, to engage in surveillance of him, obtain information taken completely out of context or manipulated to create and weave a narrative that he worked with Russian operatives, and he was installed by the Kremlin. He was doing the Putin's bidding. Meanwhile, Russia is about to invade Ukraine under Biden's watch. But anyway, several sentences of the filing recount a second meeting in February 2017 where Mr. Sussman had presented different concerns about odd internet data in Russia to the Central Intelligence Agency. Why Mr. Sussman would be tasked with this job obviously is directly correlated to why he was hired by Clinton. So, which came from the same cybersecurity researchers who developed the suspicions he had presented to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. At the Central Intelligence meeting, Mr. Sussman shared concerns about data that suggested that someone using a Russian-made smartphone may have been connecting to networks at Trump Tower and the White House, among other places. How is this not surveillance? First of all, it is a categorical fact that the information obtained by Sussman and the tech people was false. Trump had nothing to do with communicating with the Kremlin. That was the accusation. That was false. How they obtained the data was called a word, let's see, what's the word? Surveillance. They obtained information on Trump through, what's the word? Surveillance. That's right. Yeah. But see, Democrats, media, everyone on the left, they cannot possibly admit. They cannot possibly admit it. They cannot possibly come to terms and face the fact that they tried to set up and frame Trump and nothing worked. They continue to have egg on their face. They make grandiose, baseless claims all the time. And that's why there's this right-wing furor. because people are angry. And it's not a matter of right or conservative. Anyone who looks at this and thinks this is good for democracy doesn't know a thing about democracy. Imagine if the reverse were true. They would never stand for it. So, Mr. Sussman had obtained information from Mr. Jaffe. The court filing also states that Mr. Jaffe's company, Newstar, had helped maintain internet-related servers for the White House and accused Mr. Jaffe, whom Mr. Durham has not charged with any crime, and his associates of having exploited this arrangement by mining certain records to gather derogatory information about Mr. Trump. This is called surveillance. Okay? So, how they can't admit that Trump's data, information, I mean, if you read the indictment, they actually obtained information on a whole bunch of people that Trump was working with or spoke to. I mean, it was the definition of another campaign utilizing government utilizing tech companies and then eventually government and media to set up and frame an incoming candidate. Mr. Durham did not directly address that basic factual dispute. No, there's no basic here. Most important, the coverage about purported spying on the Trump White House was premised on the idea that the White House network involved came from it when Mr. Trump was president. But Mr. Durham's filing did not say when it was from. No, that is not what. That is absolutely, so this is with all due respect to the New York Times, that is absolutely not what the coverage on purported spying is premised upon. What it is premised upon is not the idea, it is the fact that they obtained information about Trump's internet usage and then gave that information to the Central Intelligence Agency and media and other people to create a web of lies and deceit that he worked with Alpha Bank to communicate with the Kremlin and, install himself into the presidency. This is not rocket science, my God almighty, it's so easy to understand. And so what the New York Times and others do is they pretend to get in the mind of conservatives who are upset. And what they do is they say, oh, well, you're obviously upset because of this reason. Well, as you know, no. It has nothing to do with whether information was obtained during President Obama's administration or after President Obama's administration. That's completely irrelevant. The relevant issue is that Trump's data usage was collected through corrupt means. End of story. And the indictment is directly correlated to that because the indictment says, well, Sussman lied to the FBI. Now, Sussman, I do agree. I agree with Sussman as defense attorneys. He didn't lie because guess what? People at the Bureau were in on it also. And I can't believe even Fox News is like, well, we can't assume that the government was in on it. Yes, you can assume this. Yes, you can assume people within the government were against Trump. And they wanted a pretext. My God almighty, what is so difficult? I mean, we've been through everything from Nixon to the Bush administration to Clinton. I'm like, yes, government officials lie all the time. And they say Trump, all he did was lie. It's like Trump told the truth a lot more than media did. So Mr. Durham did not address this basic factual dispute. No, it's not a basic factual. Lawyers for the Georgia Institute of Technology data scientists who helped analyze the data said on Monday that the data came from the Obama presidency. What does it matter if it came from the Obama presidency? If it has to do with Trump, what does it matter? They weren't sharing President Obama's data with the Central Intelligence Agency, were they? No. They were sharing Trump's data. Did Clinton pay an attorney to gather this information from President Obama's internet usage? No. I mean, this is not difficult to understand. You're splitting hairs. You're talking about to defend Clinton and Democrats and media. You would have to then focus only on minutia. It is completely irrelevant whether any information was obtained during President Obama's administration because all of that information had to do with Trump anyway. They weren't sharing any information from President Obama's internet usage or Democrats. Mr. Sussman's lawyer said the same in a filing on Monday night, complaining about Durham's conduct. Durham's conduct? This is from the people who set up and framed Trump. They were obtaining internet data. It's so easy to comprehend. It's like not like you would have, if you had one functioning brain cell, you could understand this. The data they compiled was data of Trump's internet usage, his presence online, or people around him, or people who worked for him. It wasn't the internet data of Democrats. So whether they were able to compile this information prior to him coming into office somehow is completely irrelevant. And then he goes, they argued that even if Mr. Sussman did falsely say to the FBI meeting that he had no client, which they deny, that would not rise to material false statement, meaning one affecting a government decision. Sure it would, because the people at the Bureau pretend that had they known Sussman was working on behalf of the Clintons, they wouldn't have accepted the information, allegedly. Oh, their narrative is off track. Like, no, the narrative is not off track. The decision facing the Bureau was whether to open an investigation about concerns he relayed at the meeting, and it would have done so regardless, they said. Why would they have... How often is it? Like, how many times have people gone to the Bureau who were Republicans offering information on President Obama's administration, or mashed potato brains Biden, or Clinton's administration? How many times do you think Peter Schweitzer sent copies of his book, many books about the Clintons, to FBI officials? Imagine if they started investigating the Clintons based on information obtained by their direct political rivals. Do you think maybe the New York Times would have a different idea of how that would play out? So, Mr. Durham said Mr. Sussman's supposed lie was material because the FBI had the Bureau known he was acting as a paid advocate for clients with a political or business agenda, agents might have asked more questions or taken additional steps before opening an investigation. The longer this goes on, Sussman will flip and sing on Baker and others, and then Baker will say, oh, well, that's not true, and then Sussman will say, well, you were in on it also. I mean, it's not rocket science, my God. This absurd, they're clinging to this belief that certain government officials were apolitical. They were highly partisan. You can look at Peter Strzok, who said, we will stop Trump. And you can look at Comey and McCabe and Clapper and Brennan. The fact that they're worshipped by MSNBC and CNN, and the fact that they're given only positive press coverage, proves that they were partisan actors. If it was Rudy Giuliani, oh my God, he's a villain. Anyone who works for Trump or defends Trump is a villain. Anyone who defends Clinton or the Democratic Party or it helps them in any way, Michael Avenatti 2020, is a hero. I mean, it's not that difficult. Whenever the information was obtained, whether it was obtained during the Nixon or Eisenhower administration, it really doesn't matter. It was about Trump. So them trying to say that, well, you know, they did all this work during President Obama's administration, well, yeah, they were setting up and framing Trump prior to President Obama leaving and prior to Trump taking over. So all of that is irrelevant. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. The whole point is, people, the whole point is that the Durham Probe has to find out a way to prove that there were government officials who deliberately set up Trump alongside paid actors like Sussman and others who deliberately set up Trump. That's all. And he's already done that with Connolly in Boston, a top agent. So, John Durham has already put a bureau official, top agent, in prison. It's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. The New York Times and Washington Post and others, Esquire, Vanity Fair, they cannot possibly accept the reality that government officials worked alongside, willingly, Clinton operatives or Democratic Party operatives to set up Trump. And again, like I said from the beginning of this, they would never have accepted, they would never have accepted this if the reverse were true. What did I tell you about the stock market? We're seeing it completely tank. Inflation is through the roof. Hit subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. That's below in the pinned comment. Read my article in the Federalist last October. I predict all of this. Now the market is tanking. Give me your thoughts below. Inflation through the roof. Oil at record highs. We're going to see it past record highs. It's approaching $100 per barrel. The producer price index is at an all-time high. Inflation is going to go through the roof, and it's because wonderful Democrats and media and the experts ended the U.S. economy because, it was for our benefit. And that opened up a Pandora's box of problems. Now we have runaway and rampant inflation. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Be here tonight at around 7 p.m. or so for the live stream. Thank you.